I think every film should be personal, except for Hollywood blockbusters. But well, still that should be personal as well, I think. But, so it is not a story. It's not my personal story, but it is a story which could have been mine as well, or from a lot of people. So I try to make a personal story, which is, of course, universal or relates to many other stories.
Like, would you recommend other filmmakers also to go for search or not?
I don't know. I'm not. Everybody has their own way to explore things, and it could be very different themes. If a person doesn't feel, I mean, I can imagine an adoptee who doesn't feel a relation at all for filmmaking to deal with this subject. So for me, it's not like really a quest. However, for me, it is a subject that keeps appearing, keeps reappearing, and that is caused mainly by the lack of representation in other productions, on TV or in films or whatever. So that's one of my motivations to do it myself and change a little bit that situation. But I think that's true for most of the filmmakers.
Yeah.
I think you make a film to deal with something that you haven't seen before or have seen in a bad way. And I think that this panel is the same. I think there's not a very, I mean, we are also in media. I mean, so
right.
It's also up to us. And it starts with the stories. If you're a filmmaker, you gotta have the story first. Because from the story evolves everything. If there's no story, there will be no movie made about that subject. So it also has to do with Asians themselves.
Some Chinese youngsters say I'm Dutch, and some Chinese youngsters say I'm Chinese. But always, I think in the last few years, I don't know, I think 20 interviews or something from Chinese people growing up here around the age of 22, 23, and they interview me and ask me the same, actually more or less the same kind of questions. Am I Chinese or am I Dutch? And the Dutch ones, the ones who say, I've always noticed, the ones who say I'm Dutch, after the first job, around that age, they're beginning to realize that I think I'm Chinese. Still, that's more than a question. Why? Because in your job, you really feel the real things. How that you're different. I think many Chinese youngsters that I know now see is that they're always trying to find their roots.
And then this professor of mine, who is like a feminist from New York, just suddenly bring in, okay, she's a Korean, and I start to realize my sexuality at that time. So she started to talk about, okay, what is media representation? So how the woman being represented in media, in different country, and how's the gay people or like the Korean communities being represented. So start to like at the same time when I start to recognize my own identity as I'm from Hong Kong, a colonial city, and then I'm a gay man. That is like all that kind of things like collapse and like kind of mixed together. So I was never a big film fan, but then my intention of making films or using like the camera as a tool to say something is because of a social awareness. So I always feel like filmmaker must have a social awareness of what you are doing, what you are using, your camera, sound, and all these like elements, and project it on a big screen. That is like a system that is ready for you. I mean, you must be aware of what you are saying to other people. So this is how like the representation, the terms of representation come to me. And like in my works, I'm very aware about how I portray a woman, how I portray a gay community of people. Yeah, this is how I always want to say to people. And to me, my responsibility or social responsibility is to tell people, like, the gay community is of no different than the other community. Like in the beginning of the world, or before the terms of homosexuality, or before before the term race is being created from the dictionary, people kind of like mix together. But only when the concept is coming, okay, now there's a term called homosexuality, like heterosexuality. There's a term called Asian people and European people, and that's when people start to think differently. Oh, you are different from me. So it's a language system that helps people to categorize.
Couldn't speak a word of English then, so my mum just basically, sent me on a plane and I landed in England and that was it pretty much. And until 2 years ago when I was 28, that was exact hard point for my life that I didn't say to myself, look, I lived in Thailand for 14 years, I lived abroad for 14 years. And now I'm 30 now, so it's just the balance slightly shifted a little bit. But I kept asking myself quite a lot, am I Thai, am I English, what exactly? But I live in England now, and I can't deny that I can never feel completely accepted as an English person, even though I live there as much as even longer than I live in Thailand now. I mean, the fact that I look Asian, the fact that every time I meet somebody they say, oh, I love Thai food. Great. I mean, they keep reminding me that I'm in their mind, I still somewhat an outsider, even though I actually, like I said, I don't live in Thailand as long as I live abroad. And so when I 2 years ago, when I got my first job in England as directing a short film for Channel 4, there was a competition that I entered my circuit into, and they select 7 directors out of 500 or something. So after I got selected, and after I'd done the film and all that, I asked my producer and said, why did you pick me out of all these people? I mean, they all of them, every single one of them were English. Actually, I was the only outsider in that set of directors. And what he said to me was, I like the different point of view to the story about black people in London, because the English look at black people in London, in South London, where there's a lot of drug dealing, a lot of murder going on. They don't want that point of view, they want a different point of view from somebody else. And then I thought, oh, actually, my point of view of black people in that part of London is exactly what you just said. But when I directed a film, it didn't come across as that.
Okay.
And the producer said to me, the story is not about, even though they do drugs in film, there's about, drug addict and all that, but he wanted a point of view of a man who trying to raise a baby and had to sell drugs for a living. And there's a point of view to that, which, that was his choice, and that's why he chose me, which I thought was interesting.